We're coming off WrestleMania 20, which we did just a couple of weeks ago. It's available in the archives now at somethingtowrestle.com. Chris Benoit comes out of WrestleMania 20 as the new heavyweight champion. Of course, he defeated Triple H and Shawn Michaels in a triple threat match to win the title. He made Triple H tap out to win that match. And famously, Benoit is from Edmonton. I guess this begs the question, when you guys scheduled Edmonton for this pay-per-view, did you already know, hey, we're going to put the title on Benoit and we're going to go there? Or was the building booked so far in advance and it was just all a blessing in disguise?
Yeah, the booking was done way in advance. So it was all a very, very good, happy accident. And one of those situations where everything lined up, but the decision hadn't really clearly been made as far as Benoit being the champion when this thing was booked. So no, it wasn't done to, hey, Chris Benoit's going to be the champion. Let's have something in his hometown. It was the moon and the stars and everything aligning just right that it made sense.
Well, I do want to talk a little bit about that. When you know that you've got like the hometown hero coming in as champion, what do you guys line up from a PR standpoint differently? Is that guy doubling down on all the press stuff? Does he go in a week early and hit all the local radio and TV and newspapers? It does feel like he would try to line it up, a hero's welcome and get a feel good story locally as well, right?
Any and everything that you possibly can. And it helps from the standpoint locally. They all want him. They all want him. They all want to talk about the hometown boy that made good. So they're already requesting it, and we're getting it out there every way that we can. So it was good. The fact that Chris, and I even believe that Chris still had a place there and was going back and forth. So it was, to that end, that worked out really well, and people knew him. And Chris wasn't one that always went out and did a lot of that stuff. It was good practice for him as well, because Chris wasn't the best on the microphone. He wasn't one of those guys that was over the top. This was a chance for him to get out of his comfort shell and for him to be able to get out in front of audiences and tell his story and let people get to know, that real guy.
How do you think he was adjusting to being the world champion? We hear, not so much now, but back in the day, we used to hear that Vince always had or wanted to have a special relationship with his champion, that they would talk every day, that they would be very close. And Vince still took that honor of making someone champion very seriously and felt like they were sort of the face of the company. And a lot of guys have talked about the stress of, carrying that weight of the responsibility of the success, the highs and lows, as it were, of the WWE or WWF at the time. And that could be a bit of a grind. How was Benoit in that role 30 days in here?
Still learning. And I don't know that was ever anything that Chris was ever completely comfortable with. It was something that Vince did work a lot with him on personally, but Chris, he wrestled in the ring. That's what he did best. And that is what, made his name for him. That's what people loved him for. So for him to go and verbalize that a lot of times, that was difficult. That was difficult for him. And that was something that Vince did work with him an awful lot. And, you get the very best that you can out of it. And it was a slow process, but the only way you're going to get better, no different than how you get better in the ring is repetition. The only way you're going to get better at doing media interviews and speaking in front of large audiences is actually doing it. Go out there, flub up a few times and do what you have to do, but then you're going to be more comfortable. And when you're comfortable, it's better.
Let's talk about, the mission to sort of make him, it does feel a little bit like a paradigm shift for the company. And I'm putting words in your mouth here, so I want you to set the record straight. I wasn't there. You were. But it feels like the company's in a bit of a transition, with no competition, with WCW and ECW going under in 2001. It feels like 02 and 03 very much became transitional years where you're trying to find sort of the new norm. You've got a stacked and loaded roster. You're trying new things with, Steve Austin or with Hulk Hogan. By the time 04 rolls around, It feels like you've settled into something new. Business has certainly taken a dip and you're trying to sort of find your way. And it feels like there's a bit of a paradigm shift from Vince McMahon. So there is this Raw brand split. And now you've got, Raw on one side, SmackDown on the other. And coming out of WrestleMania 20, instead of going with two or even one more traditional heritage champion, you've got really two projects, Eddie Guerrero on SmackDown and Chris Benoit on Raw. You're trying two new things, pushing two new totally top guys. Is that a response from Vince thinking, we need to shake things up, pal? Let's try something different. Or is it just, am I reading too much into that?
No, it was time that we had to change things up and we were going to try something new. I go back to, 1993 with Bret Hart and Hulk was gone. It was an opportunity where Vince looked at it. We had gone from, Hogan to Savage to Flair to Warrior to all these different talent that were very, very flamboyant and very out there. They were all proven top stars to Bret Hart. And the idea was, okay, we are going to make Bret this top star. So the mindset in the company became everything that we did with Bret was, what would we do if it was Hulk? That was the mindset. Whatever you have to do, you get him on the Tonight Show, you get him on Good Morning America, whatever it is that you have to do, that's what we want to do with our new champion. Same thing here. It was prior to this, it was Stone Cold Steve Austin. It was The Rock. And those were the big stars that had driven the company probably 10 years before. Well, not even 10 years before, but they were the most recent that people related to and that everyone compared everyone else to. This was if he was Steve Austin, what would we do? And you had to look at it partially like that, but at the same time, we don't want him to be Steve Austin.
Right.
We don't want him to be The Rock. We want them to be, Eddie Guerrero. We want him to be Chris. And it was a subtle, it was subtleties. It was, we wanted all the same opportunities, but to create a little bit different persona, not that over the top beer drinking, hell raising Stone Cold Steve Austin or the pie eating, smackdowning Rock. It was now, hola chico, with Eddie Guerrero, and a straightforward business, wrestler athlete in Chris Benoit.
Well, it does feel like you guys are trying to sort of establish him or reestablish him or cement him as the top guy, whatever it may be, because you're coming back here with a rematch from WrestleMania 20, which is a little rare, I guess. We're going to be back on top. Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Chris Benoit. Why the decision to go back to the same match?
A couple of reasons. One was to get the victory over the other guy, that being Shawn Michaels. And it was a great match. The story didn't end at WrestleMania. It was just another chapter at WrestleMania to crown the new champion. And now to solidify that champion, what better way to solidify him than to be both guys that were in that triple threat and really establish him as this is the guy now. He beat your two top stars in, basically one match. It was two matches, but still, you know what I mean? It was three. It was a triple threat. You didn't beat the weak guy. You beat the two strongest guys. And that solidified him as world champion.